Hi, today we're talking about quitting your first big girl or big boy job. I remember when I had to quit my first big girl job at my last company. And it was a long journey because for some reason I always felt like I could never leave this role. Mind you, somebody was quitting every other day at all levels of the company. So I don't know why I felt like that. I had this mindset of I'm grateful for this role, so I need to sit my ass down. And this was definitely cultural because in the Senegalese community, you're grateful to have a job, period. It doesn't matter if you like it or don't like it, the job pays the bills, therefore you like the job. So having been at that company for 5 years and things were going pretty well, I didn't really give leaving much thought. But this is the wrong mindset to have. You should always be looking for your next opportunity while you're in your current opportunity. We have heard it time and again that these companies are not loyal to us, and so we should not be loyal to them. And my take on this is work hard at your current job, but always keep an open mind. You never know when opportunity is going to come knocking. So you don't want to be closed-minded to that and potentially miss the next big thing that you could be doing. So my experience with leaving the company, because I hadn't given it much thought, was that a former manager that I worked with at that company left and went to another company, which is where I'm at now. And he hit me up and said, "Hey, I have a role that I think you'll be interested in. Do you want to talk about it?" And I was like, well, now that you mention it, maybe I should. And I had a conversation with him about the role, but really, I like working for him. And that really sold me on his judgment, his management capabilities, the experience we had working together. Like, we had such a good working relationship. And when he called me up about another role, I was like, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. And the offer was really good, so I couldn't pass up on it. But I was still nervous to tell my manager at the time that I'm leaving because for some reason I had this crazy idea in my mind that I was so invaluable, that I was so indispensable, which is the craziest thing you can think when you're in any role. Okay, so here I was thinking, oh my God, if I leave, what's my manager gonna do? Is the team gonna be okay? They were just fine. They were just fine. And so I had to work up the nerve to tell him that I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice, and then I had to get to work. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Before that, though, I really do have to go back to the mindset that I had, that I was so important. Who am I to think that I'm so valuable to this company that they will never get rid of me? That is Delulu thinking. That is Delulu thinking, and that is a trap you never want to fall into, thinking that this company will never get rid of you. I have witnessed with my own eyes my manager at the company that I'm at now, well, I guess former manager, literally get ousted, fired after 17 years with no notice. No notice. Okay, so do not fall into the trap that you're too expensive, you're too valuable, no, nobody is indispensable at these companies. Okay, so let's talk about the process that I went through in quitting and then how I prepared myself to leave. The key step that you want to take is making sure you have your next role lined up before you quit your current role. And I know this can be a little controversial, especially if it's like a hostile work environment, or maybe you just got to get out of there. Maybe they fire you. Maybe you don't even have a choice in planning for your next role. But if you do have the choice, if you do have the option of looking for that next role and securing the offer, getting the offer, agreeing on the offer, and signing it before you put in your 2 weeks notice at your current role or company or whatever, that is a key step. I had to make sure that I was not digging a new hole before I got out of the one that I was already in. And I wanted to make sure that I left the door open in case I wanted to come back. So this was the fear in me that maybe I won't like this new company. I like the manager, but what if I don't like the company? And I wanted to make sure that I left on amicable terms in case I wanted to come back. I'm going to do another episode on that, the importance of leaving on good terms, even if you don't like your manager, even if you don't like your team, because you never know when you can boomerang back into a company. You never know if an opportunity will come up to work with these people again in another setting. So I do not recommend leaving on bad terms unless it's just like extenuating circumstances. Barring that, you should try to leave on as best terms as possible. And the way that you do that is through advance notice. So whatever is written in your handbook, typically 2 weeks is the standard, but giving advance notice, making sure you document your work. I'm going to get into all of that. It was really important for me to stay focused because I was already starting to check out. The fact that I had another role lined up and it was unknown, so it was exciting, I had to make sure that I stayed connected to my role, and the reason being I had to document everything that I was doing. In the last video, I talked about document your work along the way so you can avoid performance improvement plans or someone coming to you and asking you, what have you been doing? And this is a lesson that I learned in my last role where I was just working, things were going well. I didn't think about leaving, so I didn't really document as much as I am now in my current role. And this was a very important step because I wanted to make sure that I didn't set my team up for failure with me leaving. Even though I'm not indispensable, even though other people can do what I'm doing, I wanted to make sure that I provided as much knowledge that was in here and put it down on paper so they could take over without there being too much interruption to the work. And that's just what a good employee, I think, would do. Is you don't want to leave people hanging. You don't want to create chaos when you leave. Like, you want to make sure it's, as like I said, as amicable a divorce, a work divorce, as possible. And that's only going to add to your reputation. It's only going to add to your credibility as an employee if you take that seriously. And I was really proud to have done that because about a year after I left, my manager hit me up for a recommendation letter. So him applying for another managerial role, they were asking him if any of his previous or current employees would be able to write a note of recommendation for him, and he reached out to me. So I felt honored that he would think of me because, one, he probably knew I was going to say something good about him. We had a great working relationship, but also because I left on such a good note, it left the door open for us to continue having a relationship. Even if we're not talking all the time, the fact that I know if I need something from him, I can hit him up because I left on a good note. If he needs something from me, he can hit me up. I think that was just it just made the experience that much better. So all the fear that I had about quitting my job, I'm glad that I was able to mitigate a lot of those risks and quell my anxiety around it because I went about it, in my opinion, the right way. In short, I did my due diligence, the timing was right, and I left on a good note, and I can't ask for more than that. So let me talk about now, if you're thinking about quitting, some of the steps that you can take, some tips that I have for you, and just making sure the experience is as positive as possible. So if you want to come back, you can come back, or you can see them out in the street at a later date and hold your head up high. So I already mentioned this one, but you need to secure your next step. And this can be time off, this can be the next role, this can be a sabbatical, which is the same thing as a time off, but a little bit different. But like, you need to make sure that your plan B, whatever it is, you just want to make sure you don't quit willy-nilly, especially these roles where it's important to have a consistent resume. You don't want to have gaps in your resume that you can't explain. You want to make sure that the next role that you're going into, you're being propelled from your previous role in a very positive way, so you don't have these gaps in your resume. You don't have these bad experiences that you potentially have to talk about or have follow you around for the rest of your career. So make sure you have a very clear plan on what you're going to do when you quit that role before you put in your 2 weeks notice. And this is an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to give it. Even if things are not going so well, barring the abuse or like the workplace harassment, things like that, if it's just not the best environment, or maybe you're just not jiving well with your manager, I'm going to advise you to hold on as much as you can while you devise a plan for leaving. It's really easy to get frustrated one day and just say, I'm done. Fuck this. I'm out. But if you can avoid having that outburst, if you can avoid having that impulsive decision, it can really set you up for success so that you're not getting into the next role that may not even be good for you, but you're so desperate, you just want to get out of the current role that you're in. So really be diligent and be intentional about the next role that you're going into. And the best way you can do that is what I said at the top of the episode, which is always be thinking about your next role while you're in your current role. If you're doing that, it's the saying, like, you stay ready so you don't got to get ready. I learned that lesson when I was just comfortable in my last role and I wasn't even thinking about the next one. Now in my current role, I am constantly on the careers website. I'm constantly looking at if there are other opportunities that may be better for me. So you always want to be a couple steps ahead and not wait until the situation is so dire that you're desperate to quit and get into whatever the next thing is, even if it's not good for you. The other tip that I have for you is closing the loop on your current role. So I talked a little bit about it with the documentation piece, but you want to make sure that you leave in a very definitive way, right? You don't want to leave, be at your next role, and then someone's hitting you up on LinkedIn asking you, hey, where is this? Where is that? No, you want to make sure that when you leave, they can perform everything that you were able to perform, even if it's not to the standard that you could do it, or if they can't do everything, at least the steps are there. The documentation is there, who they need to talk to, who you used to work with. All of those things need to be documented so that when you leave, you're gone, you're done, and they don't have to reach out to you for anything. You also, I recommend this, you want to make sure that you leave a farewell note with all the recipients on BCC. So this, for me, if you've been at a company for a long time and you're leaving, you're going to miss these employees. Like, some of these are your work friends. Leaving a farewell note also adds to your good reputation if you have one. Hopefully you do. But if you send that farewell note and you say, hey, I have had such a great time at this company. The experience has been amazing. I've enjoyed working with you guys and learning from everyone. Here's my contact information. Hope to see you guys in the future someday. That is like the cherry on top to your experience at that company and in that role. Because what it does is really keeps the thread going and the energy alive between the contacts and the connections that you've made with people who you work with. And by leaving your contact information, you never know. Maybe someone who worked with you on a project can reach out to you at some time in the future and say, hey, I have this opportunity. Would you be interested? It really is about, it's like, how do I describe it? Like, it's like you want to make sure that you leave definitively, but leave the door open, because you never know where an opportunity can come with somebody that you worked with in the past or somebody from your previous company. So I don't know. This is something that I always recommend, is when you're leaving a role, saying thank you to the team members that you work with, saying goodbye, for now. It's like, I'm going to see you again probably. If all goes well, next time we see each other, there's going to be no animosity, no hard feelings. Like, everybody is just happy with everything that happened. I hope that makes sense. The other thing that I always recommend is taking some time off between the role you're quitting and the role you're going into. And maybe this isn't like a month-long vacation, but maybe like a week or two. Negotiate that with your start date and your end date. So when you're giving your 2 weeks notice, make sure that you put some time between the two roles. So one, you can mentally shift. You're not going from one project at one company to a whole other project at another company, because there's going to be a ramp up period. And you want to make sure that you give yourself time to debrief, time to reflect on your experience, time to set some goals for the new company that you're going into or the new role that you're going into. Like, give yourself the space and the grace to take time off. Okay. It's going to do you wonders. You're going to see yourself coming into your new role refreshed, open-minded, just a whole new person. So I highly recommend taking some time between roles when you're quitting. Overall, quitting that first job can be intimidating. It can be scary because it's kind of an unknown, but let me tell you this, once you do it once, it gets easier. My first time quitting, I was so nervous. I didn't know what to do. I was just so like, the next time around, I got into that role, and a year in, I was like, this is not working. And I like I said, I was on that careers website. I sure was. And I found my next role and I gave my notice. Luckily, it was a year in, so we hadn't really had time to build these crazy bonds. And I was working remote, so these people had never seen me before a day in their lives. So it made it easier for me to quit. But nonetheless, even if you're going to the office Monday through Friday, even if you are seeing these people all the time, even if you're going to happy hour, or like your families know each other, whatever the case is, if you're actively searching for that next opportunity and it comes up, you need to build the courage to put in your 2 weeks notice and do it confidently. Okay, make sure you leave a good reputation behind and just go. It's okay to look for that next opportunity. You should be looking for that next opportunity. And they always say in corporate America, like 2 to 3 years is kind of like the sweet spot for looking for that next opportunity or a promotion. So you should never be doing something for too long anyways. And if you've been in a role for 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years, and no one's talking about promotions, no one's talking about pivoting anything, it's time for you to look for that next opportunity. So make sure that you are on top of it. Stay on top of it. Look out for yourself and make sure that you are putting your best interests first. Remember that you are not indispensable. You're just not, okay? And I'm going to talk about my maternity leave in another episode, because I was gone for 6 months and the world didn't stop spinning. Okay, similar to quitting, you think when you go, things are gonna, no. These companies will be just fine. So like I said, put yourself first and really position yourself to be successful. And any good manager should be encouraging you to progress, to grow. And that may mean not within their team. And they should not be holding you back. So if you have a manager that's making you feel like, oh my God, you can never leave. No. Any good manager would push you to try to get out there, try to look for the next best opportunity, learnings, trainings, certificates, all these things like conferences. They should really be pushing you to maximize your potential at that company or anywhere else, because your interest and your success comes before that of their projects or their priorities. Do you get what I'm saying? It's a healthy balance of like, join the team, do a good job, do your work, but when it's time to go, when the time is right, you have to go. That's all I had for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.